Good evening. I too acknowledge that we are on Cammeraygal land and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. As you've heard, I've been asked to give you some facts about Council's recent actions and position, and then the ongoing concerns with the project. So I'd just first like to acknowledge that our local member is here, Tim James, so thank you. So I'll start with the formal resolve position of Council. Most of you will know this, but I think it's really important to acknowledge that the very first extraordinary meeting of this new Council on the 24th of January this year, this Council resolved to reinstate its strong opposition to the Western Harbour Tunnel and Northern Beaches Link projects due to the devastating impacts of the proposed projects on the North Sydney local government area and the absence of any public benefit to be gained from the project. And we resolved that Council continue and escalate our campaign on these projects on behalf of the community. So, thank you. At the 27th of June meeting of this year, this Council resolved to call on the New South Wales State Government to immediately halt, review and reassess the Western Harbour Tunnel and Northern Beaches Link projects, that Council would write to the Premier, the Treasurer, the Minister for Roads, the Minister for the Environment, the Opposition Leader and the Shadow Treasurer and Shadow Ministers for the Environment and the Roads, seeking an urgent halt and review and a reassessment of the tunnels projects in terms of need and priority. We also wrote to the Prime Minister and the Federal Treasurer and to our new local member for the federal seat of North Sydney, Kylie Tink, again saying that we seek that no federal funds be provided to the tunnel projects without a risk assessment and an assessment of priority and need for the project to be undertaken. So far, we've had a response from the Prime Minister, who has referred the matter for consideration and action to the new Minister for Infrastructure and Local Government, Catherine King. This week, our new local member, Kylie Tink, raised this matter in Parliament. She put a question to the Minister for Infrastructure as to the funding of the projects, of these sorts of infrastructure projects, and specifically this one, without a carbon case. And indeed, I have to say that Kylie Tink was elected in May, and this is not the first time that she has strongly put our community's position on these projects to the Parliament. And that's exactly what we expect of our representatives. To date, there have been no responses to Council's letters to the state government. At the same June Council meeting, Council adopted our delivery plan, our budget for the 2022-23 financial year, and an important part of that was that we have allocated $180,000 to undertake master planning of Camm Park lands and the surrounding public lands. And shortly, the Council will commence a rigorous, detailed community consultation and engagement for this community to put forward its vision on these plans for the future and following these projects. More recently, the Acting General Manager, Rob Emerson, and I met with Rob Stokes, the Minister for Infrastructure and Cities, and also with the Chief Operating Officer and the team and the bureaucrats responsible, the project leaders on both these projects. We strongly urged them that the government underground those operational sheds, that they ensure no net loss of open space, particularly at Camm, ensure that Council remains as the Crown Land Manager on behalf of the community with care and control of those lands, and that they direct their contractors, they're the state government's contractors, they're ours, to properly consult with Council and the community on the removal of trees and the long-term vision for this open space. So now I'll turn to Council's ongoing concerns with the project. The first and obvious one that breaks all of our hearts is the tree loss. In January of this year, there were 1,330 trees on Camm Golf Course. 487 have been removed for the western portion of the golf course, with a further 168 being removed or actually removed already for the reconfiguration of the golf course. So that's 655 trees on Cammeray Golf Course alone. Now, those figures come from Transport for New South Wales. They're not something the council has made up. Further, significant canopy loss will result as a result of these if the projects proceed further. So all along the route, and especially the freeway, including High Street and Arthur Streets. And the contractor has learnt something from Camm Park, because that immediate destruction that began in January and reoccurred in June, they're taking a few trees each night, slowly stripped away as if we won't notice. Yes, even last night. Last Friday, council staff were informed that as of today, the 7th of September, a further 135 trees will be removed from Cammeray Avenue, Roslyn Street, Anzac Park, Anzac Reserve, Falcon Street to Ernest Street, and the Miller Street off-ramp. Council staff, as you can imagine, because they are as passionate as the community and the elected representatives on this, contacted the project contractors and advised that the removal is not supported, and requested that they reconsider their work methodology in order to retain those trees, or as many as possible. Council's Acting General Manager contacted Tim James' office seeking his support, and this morning Tim's office advised Council's Acting General Manager that the trees won't be removed today, and they won't be removed without due process with regards to consultation and notification. But unfortunately, Tim, it's Council's experience that this will be just a short delay. The contractor has absolute free rights under the contract and will continue to do as it wishes. It'll be crash or crash through. The government's answer to all of this is that they will replace two trees for every one lost. So whilst Condition E184 of the consent provides for the planting of 2 trees for each removed, there's no obligation on the relevant contractor to engage with council or the community on the species, the location, the size. It will be decades before the lost canopy and habitat will be replicated, and if those trees were planted today, our children will be older than we are before they reach the maturity of the canopy that we've lost. In fact, the development conditions are exceptionally vague and leave a hell of a lot to the government and to the contractor. They have no level of certainty about what will happen with community assets at the completion of the project. So, for example, there's a condition E157 that says the CCSI must result in a net increase in usable space. Replacement space must be in the general vicinity of the loss. Now, this is the crucial part, and this is replicated among condition after condition. And this is where the get out of free jail card is, unless agreed by the planning secretary. So this allows Transport for New South Wales to obtain a variation to crucial conditions without any community input or right of appeal. The planning secretary alone can just sign off. Our next issue is about council and community engagement. The contractor and the government talk about consulting with council on each step of these projects, and I'm sorry, it's a ticker-box consultation at best, with council staff bound by non-disclosure agreements, and they characterise their role in these consultations as observers, lucky to even be at the table, next to the table, making the decision. So, for example, the so-called consultation on the removal of the trees, it's always within hours of the trees being removed, and it's told to us. There's no capacity for discussion. The decision has been made and council has no input at all. And that's the case for what will happen with the open space, and that's left to the contractor in the design detail. The next issue we really have is that loss of critical open space, and for it to be permanent. Its critical valued open space has gone from the community, not just at Camm Park, but at St Leonard's Park, Anzac Park, Alfred Street, and the whole way along the freeway. Council currently has no indication of how that permanent loss will be replaced to ensure that there is no net loss of open space as per the condition of the consent, E157. So finally, I'll come back to Camm Park, because we could be talking tonight beyond this. We could be talking about Berries Bay, we could be talking about Waverton, we could be talking about High Street and the flyover. The details of these projects are truly devastating on our community. There's been a failure to consult and engage with council and the community over the reconfiguration of the golf course. The condition was imposed without consultation with council, who was the landlord, and left entirely at the discretion of the contractor as to how it would be delivered. There's been a failure to consult with council or the community over the long-term community vision for this important these important public lands, what's to happen now and 40, 50 years from now. There's been no transparency with regards to the negotiations and the potential compensation between the government and the golf club. And there's been a utter failure to plan for or contemplate the undergrounding of the operational sheds and other works to ameliorate the loss of public open space. So in summary, these projects are an appalling piece of public policy with devastating impacts on North Sydney. The world has moved on, yet this government is pursuing a 1950s infrastructure planning where the car is king. Research shows car usage and ownership is declining. The most recent census data shows us that, particularly in North Sydney, but across metropolitan Sydney. We, as a council and a community, have declared a climate emergency, and sustainable mass public transport is a key to emissions reduction. We're destroying parks to build freeways, whilst other countries are turning freeways into parks. So we routinely acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands, and part of our paying respect to those elders past, present and emerging is a recognition of their careful stewardship of this land for tens of thousands of years. We as a community are now the stewards of these lands, and it's our sacred duty to fight to protect them for future generations. So in that spirit, I say the time has come that we as a community have to stop being so polite. We have to act fiercely to protect our environment, and to do so, we have to strongly hold this government and our state representatives within this government to account. Thank you.